I'm going to conclude this Just Peacemaking blog series with some stories of hope that I was able to see and experience in the Middle East. And hope that we don't say is only going to happen someday in the future, but a hope that in Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, and His inaugurated kingdom, that in Mark 1:14 He says, the kingdom has come. The kingdom is at hand. Repent and believe the good news. It has come in the new covenant, in the inaugurated kingdom. We can trust that God's reign through Jesus is at hand. It's here. And we begin to be part of that process now. And as we stood in the village of Zacharias, the Palestinian village in the West Bank, and just next to it is a Jewish-Israeli settlement. 41 years, one of those settlers has lived in that settlement and driven by this Palestinian village of Zacharias every day, over and over, and never has he met the family, this Palestinian family. We went there, and we actually met a Jewish Israeli who is seeking peace in some of these relationships between settlers and Palestinians. And we connected with him. He brought us to this village. And with him came this settler who has for 41 years intentionally not tried to build relationships with this Muslim Palestinian family. And we pull up to this family's home, and we hear that the son of this Muslim Palestinian father, his home is going to be destroyed soon by Israel as they expand their settlement into the West Bank. So you would think there'd just be this bitter, angry, fierce posture from this man, this Palestinian gentleman. But there wasn't. There was invitation. He invited us into his home. We shared. He pulled out all of their resources of different sodas and juices and nuts, and we ate. And he invited this settler, this Jewish fellow, into his home with all of us. And we got to stand with them in solidarity as they began to dialogue and bring up the realities that they have lived next to each other for all this time, within hundreds of yards of each other, and had no communication. And hearing them speak, you could see that there was layers of complexity, layers of disagreement. On one hand, this father is about to see his son lose his house, his home, for his family. And on the other, this Jewish man believes that his faith allows him to have the right to this land. And this Palestinian gentleman is taking that. And so you see these warring and dueling narratives coming up against each other, and we're kind of all looking at each other like, well, how's this going to end? And it didn't end. It's not over. But we watched this dialogue begin to take place, and we saw some common understanding and some light bulbs go off to realize that this gentleman is a human, and so is this one. And what is it going to look like for us to stand with each other and for us to agree that some acts, no matter what religion you adhere to, are just wrong, are acts of injustice, and how do we advocate for those together? And by the end of the conversation, we were able to see them come to some conclusions on this. And then just the next day, we were able to go to a community in Israel made up of Jews, of Muslims, and of Christians. An intentional community of 60 families who say all of these warring, all this warring rhetoric and lines that we draw between religions, it doesn't have to mean we hate each other. In fact, we can live with each other. And so this place called Neve Shalom, Oasis of Peace, exists. And we got to step in and see these groups of people not only living in the same area, but sharing much of life, sharing areas of worship, respecting one another's belief systems, while at the same time listening and learning from each other as they move forward. Symbolizing the potential of what can happen here in the Middle East. And it was a brilliant and beautiful picture of what could be. And they didn't paint it as some perfect reality, and they talked about the tensions and the difficulties that are inherent with this kind of arrangement. But it also was something that we could tangibly say there is hope here. in hearing the movements of nonviolence that begin to be birthed, in hearing and seeing examples of community that transcends religion and polarizing ideologies, and ultimately seeing these Christians all throughout the land that say, our Jesus is a Jesus of restoration. And it isn't a restoration that we just simply sit back and wait to happen. It's something that He's invited us part of today. And we see these movements, these mustard seeds of hope that say there is a reason that we cannot sit back and simply be complicit with towing a party line or religious ideal, that we have to embrace these complexities of the situation, and we have to trust that we can actually be part of their resolution and their restoration. And so we come away with that saying, there's more to the story. I look at myself and say, if I am to be faithful to these stories, and if these stories I can see is wrapped up in God's masterful story of redemption, I have to look at myself and say, where do I fit in this? And how do I step into that story as one that has been captivated by the restoration and the hope that I find in Jesus? And how is that going to play out in my life today and tomorrow? And how am I going to advocate for areas that are fractured and broken? And there's so much more to process and so much more to wrestle through and so many complexities in this. But I thank you for walking through bits and pieces of it with me and taking seriously enough our vocation to be peacemakers, to ask some hard questions that may break open our paradigms. I know it certainly has mine. So continue to walk forward with me in this and share insights along the way. Thanks.